Whew. Today's video is a video on how to rappel. I am up on Independence Pass and I'm walking up to a climbing area, a crag that is called Burger Shack. And I want to set up a rappel and talk about it a little bit, demonstrate it, and enjoy this beautiful autumn day on the pass at 10,000 feet. Super nice day. And actually, it's a little warm, maybe too warm. On this aspect, the leaves are off of the aspen trees. It's beautiful on the way up Independence Pass, but in this area, not so much. But this is the crag called Burger Shack. And we have a little bit of a walk to go to a different side of Burger Shack to climb. All right, here we are. That's the line where the rappel is going to be set up. I'm going to walk around and walk up to the top. It's kind of funny being back here. I haven't been here in over a year. And I used to be here in June, July, August, September, probably 2 to 3 days a week, every day of the week for, I think, 15 plus years. When I wasn't doing a 14er, guiding on the 14ers, this is where I was teaching rock climbing. And like I said, it's really good to be back here. This is the little climber's trail that takes you up to the top. There's a couple of bolts up here, anchors that were put in years ago for rappelling or setting up a safety line, a line where you could attach a rope to it and then work along the edge to set up the top rope climbs. In climbing, you don't want to ever just free solo along the edge, setting up your top rope climbs. All it takes is that one slip and over the edge you go. The bolts are down there for the climbs. There's some over on that side, some on this side, and the bolts for rappelling or the safety line are right here. And this is what we're going to use. So I'm going to spread out the gear and then go over that and just set it up pretty quickly. Okay, I've emptied out my pack and I stacked the rope here. This is a 9.5 rope, and we used to use 10.2. 9.8 are popular, but this 9.5 at 60 meters, I like it. It's a little bit lighter. It still would not make a good glacier rope. I've heard some people are going all the way down to 7.5 for glacier travel, snow travel. That's probably good. It's also seems to me pretty light. I might go to an 8, but I don't think I would go to a 9.5. I have a cordelette here. I think this is a 6 mil. And just clipped into the 2 bolts. The bolts still look good. One side's locked. And then I clip in 2. And then down here, oh, and I put a fisherman knot here, double. You can see the X, the 2 crosses, and then the 2 11s. I guess that's what we teach. and I have plenty of tail, so I'm not worried about that. And then here, I'm going to tie probably an overhand on a bite, and that way this system is redundant here. This will be the master point, so I pointed it down that way. There'll be a little play in the system, but that's okay. And right there are the bolts that I will rappel to and then rappel past. This is a good setup for teaching rappelling. I wouldn't teach beginners here. First, I would want to do ground school rappelling, where it's actually flat and you do it in a flat environment. But what's nice about this, for people that have rappelled a little bit, maybe once or twice, is that you're starting out where it's pretty user-friendly, the terrain, it's not super steep. And then you get to where you go over the edge and you have to talk about what happens then. So I'm gonna go ahead, tie the master point, put in 2 more carabiners, flake the rope out, and then throw the rope. And throwing the rope is actually one of the more important aspects of setting up a rappel. I will also, even though I know the ropes touch the ground here, I'll tie a knot in the rappel line. And you always want to do that because there's been too many cases of people rappelling off the end of the rappel line or rappel ropes. Rappelling, descending, it's one of the most dangerous things that we do in rock climbing and mountaineering. You're depending on your gear, you're depending on setting up things, and a lot of times people are doing it when they're tired, descending the mountain, and they don't set up the best rappels, or even redundant rappels. Anyway, I'm gonna finish setting this up and then I'll get more into the actual rappel itself. So I like to say there's 1,000 ways to do things, and I'm going to show you a couple of ways of setting up the rappel itself. I'm using an ATC for rappelling. They work really well. If you drop your ATC, which I don't think I've ever done that, but I've seen it happen. And with the ATC, if I dropped it, or if I'm with someone that dropped theirs, you can always do a munter hitch, an Italian hitch, around this pear-shaped carabiner here. I probably won't show that. That's kind of at a different level than what I'm doing here. For belaying, I always use this side of putting the ropes through, and that's the best side. And it locks off really nicely to do that for rappelling too. I've seen some people use it on this side because it slides faster. I prefer not to do that. So you put both ropes through. This is highly important. You really want to pay attention when you're doing this. And then in through the carabiner, and then you lock it down. This is going to be my brake hand on this side here, the brake hand. Brake is just back by the hip. This hand up here, I'm not really hanging on tightly, but I will have my hand there just to keep my balance. Right now, I have as you can see, I have the locking carabiner right off my harness. And this is frowned upon in a lot of settings. Sometimes I do it because I have forgot to bring a system that I can do a cordelette and do it off of that. By the way, this right here, this loop is rated that I can rappel or belay right here. But I want to show you what most people are doing, and I think this is smart. It gives you a little bit faster rappel. It's not so close to you. What can happen, you can get clothing, hair caught in here, and that can be disastrous on multi-pitch rappels. and it's hard to get it undone once it's weighted. Cool, it's a little windy. So what I'm using is a cow's tail here, right off my harness, is a single point anchor system. It's not really a daisy chain, but it is that's what we call it. So now I would take the locking carabiner and I can put it in one of these loops, then lock it down. But I have all of this, so I want to get this out of the way, out of the system. So I will just put it into a non-locker back here, just to keep it out of the way. Now when I'm leaning back on the system, what I just did there, I'm going to keep it in the video because that's a good way to die on your rappel. I did not have the double ropes in the system, and that's actually how people have perished. So now I have it locked in. Now it's in a good place, and if I lean back on it, everything's locked in, and I have it out there away from me so things don't get caught so easily in here. But I'm still not done. I'm by myself. I don't have someone to do a fireman's belay. I don't have another rope where someone's belaying me on this side. So I did bring a system to do a belay off my harness. And you can put this on in a couple of different places. And what I'm doing is going to put a prusik on the rope. Now, some people that are watching this may get all excited about where I place it, but I'm actually going to place it here on this side of the ATC, and I've seen some people place it on this side. The reason I don't like it on that side, I think it's actually can be dangerous. It can get caught in your system. This goes on my leg loop. Again, I'm going to lock this in. And this is only a 4 mil. It's quite small, but I like it being small because it actually grips the rope well. So now if something should happen and I get knocked out, a rock hits me or something, then this auto block system will hold me in place. What you don't want people to do though, when they're rappelling, people will have a tendency to put their hand on it and slide it. And if you keep doing that, and if you grip it and something happens, you could potentially slide to the end of the rope. So don't grip that. Occasionally you may have to slide it down a little bit. So now I'm actually ready to rappel down, and the system's pretty easy at this point. But I still have to throw the ropes. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to take the camera with me. Okay, now I'm right at the edge. So I'm going to set the auto block, and I'm not leaning back on the system. I'm watching myself. I'm being pretty super careful at this point. And I'm going to toss the rope. Normally you do a big shout, you toss the ropes over, but the problem with it here, if I toss too big, I will toss them into an aspen tree, which I've done that before, and I don't want to do that because it's a pain to try to pull them and break limbs and stuff to get your rope out of the aspen tree. So I have one in here. I'm going to just put it right there. And now I'm bringing the other end down. And I want to keep track of that end because I'm going to tie a knot in the bottom of the rope. It's part of closing the system for a rappel, and that's what I want to do. And whether you're belaying people, you'll hear guides talk about closing the system, and that's super important. So I have the two ends here, and all I'm doing is just going to do a figure 8 at the bottom, just a big old knot that I know I would not be able to go through if the rope, the rappel rope, did not hit the ground. So instead of throwing it, I'm just easing it down because I can see the bottom from this location. So again, I'm all set up. I'm doing a double check. Everything's locked. I'm locked. I've got backup. There's redundancy in the system, and I'm going over the edge. But before I go completely down over the edge, I want to talk a little bit about redundancy, which I already have. I'm redundant throughout my system here. And the other thing that I want to speak to, and that is positioning. I have my feet apart, and I'm somewhat relaxed. I'm not locked out. My body's forming a chair or an L shape, but my knees are flexed, but I don't want to collapse. A lot of times when people are first rappelling, you'll see them come to the edge, they go over, and they just collapse and hit their knees, that sort of thing. And I don't want my feet to get too low, and I don't want my feet to get too high. So I'm going to continue on down, and so far it seems to be working pretty well. But yeah, that's how you set up a rappel. That's really basic information I gave. To really set up a rappel, learn to do it. Do not learn to do it by YouTube videos. Go if you're brand new to the activity, to the sport of rock climbing, mountaineering. Go with a professional. Go with a guide. Go with a guide that is AMGA certified, that has gone through the process, is doing continuing education. So that's my soapbox on that. I have another video where I talked about that quite a bit, using a guide that is going through the certification process and doing it through the American Mountain Guides Association. There's other certifying bodies, and I'll talk more about that in other videos. And I'm not concluding the video here, I'm just taking a break. And I do want to talk a little bit more about knots, hitches, just a little bit. I'm not doing a knots class per se, but I'll do that in a minute. I mentioned earlier I wanted to show the double fisherman. I'm not quite sure how long this cord is. Again, it's a 5 or 6 mil. I think it's 21 feet. I think I get this as a rescue cordelette. I'm not quite sure. No, it's not that long. It's a lot shorter. But it is good for setting up an anchor when you have carabiners. You don't have quick draws, but you're using a top rope rock climbing situation. So the fisherman, these are my working ends. So I have 2 working ends instead of a working end and a standing end, but one will be a standing end while I'm working it. Whoa, that's confusing. Anyway, I put them side by side. Here are the tails of the cord. And this particular cord here, I'm going to do a wrap once around, twice around, and then again. So I have double loop there, and then I'm going to put the cord through it. And that should be enough tail. You want the tail 1.5 times as long as the knot. This one is going the opposite direction away from me. So it's going 1, 2, and then I'm going to come through it. Again, the tail 1.5 times as long. Then I bring them together and they match up perfectly. These are the two X's, two 11s. It's seated, and that, you know, snug it down, and then I can use this to set up an anchor with. There's many other uses, but I did want to show the double fisherman since I had talked about it. And I'm going to wrap things up. That's it for this video. There's a lot more to show in the world of climbing, and I'll do future videos on more climbing technique, more videos on belaying, rescue procedures, using a gree-gree, belaying with the ATC. There's so much to the climbing. So it'll be probably multi-videos over the coming months and years. I'm gonna keep the channel going. I like it, it's fun. And also it's almost mid-October. So I'm gonna run out of nice weather like this and end up going more to ski technique, avalanche education, that sort of thing. Thanks everyone for watching this channel.